Wait a minute. Lens cover might be closed? What on earth? Sorry about that. This thing told me to close cover before playing. Welcome back, Gary Lewis and the Playboys fans. We only have 4 more Gary Lewis LPs to cover. Close cover before playing is on for today. We have their compilation album Rhythm, and we have their final 2 LPs, I'm on the Road Right Now and Rhythm of the Brain plus Hayride. And then we'll be all through the works of Gary Lewis and the Playboys, or the LP works anyway. So pretty exciting. We're getting down to the end of it now. Christmas of 2024, I was pretty surprised because there were 2 new CD twofers. 2-pack CDs that had never been released before on compact disc. One, you can see here, I'm on the Road Right Now, and Gary Lewis's post-Playboys singles. In the other, to help out with today's, Close Cover Before Playing and Rhythm of the Rain plus Hayride. And for all you youngsters out there, we have a really big show. We have some bonus tracks, live cuts from the Ed Sullivan Show. We'll talk more about those bonus tracks in my Rhythm of the Rain / Hayride video. But if you're an Ed Sullivan fan, make sure you tune in for that. I was pretty excited to see these on CD for the first time, and I purchased them immediately. And it's nice to have these albums that didn't really do a whole lot when they came out, kind of just lived and died at the record store. Remember, at this point in Gary's career, we have no more charting LPs, and the last couple charting singles we're going to talk about today. This was very much the end of the line for the Playboys, so it's really cool to be able to get those on CD now and be able to kind of engage with them a little bit better. So those last few albums, not a lot of love for them. Indeed, Gary's website doesn't even list several of them on his official discography. It's also interesting to note that a lot of them use repeat tracks. Indeed, the back of the CD case even reads, 2 songs were on both LPs. We've left them as they were to preserve the original package. So we're talking about songs that weren't really catching on. Most of them kind of quickly made covers, it seems, but repeat songs, albums that weren't really marketed. I tried to find publicity material for these albums. I couldn't find much of anything. It's just at this point, churning out what was left over, digging some things out of the vault, that kind of stuff, just to hope that maybe somehow a miracle could happen and Gary's career would suddenly be rejuvenated. But that did not happen, and indeed, this is kind of the end of the road for the Playboys. Now, interestingly though, I am glad they kept the duplicate songs on there. You might remember we talked about the Beach Boys twofers on this channel a lot, and Surfer Girl, for example, was paired with Shutdown Volume 2 to avoid duplicating tracks when chronologically it should have been paired with Little Deuce Coupe, but there are 2 songs that the Surfer Girl and Little Deuce Coupe LP share, so they opted instead to make sure there were no repeaters and pair them off with different albums instead. So I'm kind of surprised that for the Playboys they opted to do that, but maybe they figured since nobody really cared about these albums, no one really remembers them, it didn't really make any difference. I don't know. Who knows? So again, 2 charting singles to talk about today, but no charting albums. Let's take a look at the sleeve for Close Cover Before Playing. On the back we just have a giant track list. They're in order except for the last 2 songs are flip-flopped. This is a kind of vertically opening sleeve. If I can get it open here. There it goes. We lift up the flap, giant matchbook, and a write-up by Jim Ashton. Jim Ashton's write-up is very, very strange. Most of it's about the packaging. He does use the pun, Gary is matchless, which is a highlight. But overall, it's mostly about, hey, did you see this cool record sleeve? Oh, wow, I bet you did. I bet you this cool record sleeve made you want to buy this album. Well, maybe it didn't. The music's pretty good. But did you see the cool sleeve? I can't help but think that Jim Ashton must have been good friends with Woody Woodward, or I think it's Gabor Helmans? Helmos, excuse me, who did some of the art direction kind of stuff. He must have been friends with them. It's like, oh, hey, you're doing this design? I'll make the blurb about the album, or excuse me, about the cover instead of the album. So, there you go. It is an interesting idea. The record, of course, slides down in here into this pocket. It's kind of a, I guess, different orientation of what's called the short pack cover. When I reviewed Best of the Beach Boys Volume 3, I talked about how the record is inside here, and you have to kind of slide it out. It's not the most convenient thing, and my watchers informed me that's called a short pack. So this is a short pack, but then flipped the other way to make it vertical. It's a cool idea. It is kind of hard to get the record in and out. That's why I actually took it out ahead of time. I'll show it to you here. So I didn't have to fumble around trying to pull it in or out. And plus the sleeves kind of tear as you pull the record there. It's a very thin cardboard. It's a cool idea. I don't know that it's really all that effective. Alright, so we got the CD release. Again, the bonus tracks will kind of save. For a long time, this was only available on LP, released in either very late 1968 or very early 1969. Again, it feels like nobody really cares about this album, so no one bothered to keep track of release dates and things like that. We start off with Gary's cover of Every Day I Have to Cry Some. Steve Alaimo had a big hit with this in the early 60s. Many, many other artists have covered it. I think the Bee Gees did it. I think Ike and Tina Turner did it. And lots of people. Arthur Alexander, who wrote Al Bundy's favorite song, Him, aka Anna. He actually wrote the song, though he didn't record it right away. Apparently he recorded it much later. This is a good choice for Gary. It's definitely the kind of song I think that he can handle, and he does a good job. And since a lot of people have covered it, he has a lot of different ideas to draw from. It's a strong start to the album. It was almost used on a single. We'll talk about the 45s and stuff when we get to kind of the middle between side A and side B. But I think a strong start, and a pretty good cover. Next up we have Mr. Memory, a Michael Lawrence and Christopher Quinn, I'm assuming original for Gary and the Gang, that kind of thing. It's a very ambitious song. It almost kind of reminds me a little bit of the Beatles' I've Just Seen a Face, because it goes like really fast with this weird spoken word singing, but then it stops, you know, Mr. Memory, and has this big kind of bombastic, you know, tone change. It's an odd song. In the booklet for the singles collection, Gary notes that he was not a fan of any of the songs the group did around this time, and Mr. Memory is one of the ones he lists. It wasn't his thing. It does feel very ambitious. I'm thinking maybe someone thought it was kind of a comeback song, and as it's an original, again, you know, someone said this will be Gary's big hit, they'll make him popular again. But it didn't really catch on. It's a little quirky. I'm not a huge fan of it. Then we have Main Street. Main Street, an Astronauts cover. The Cascades did it too, but I think the Astronauts did it first. I don't really know much about the Astronauts. They were very big in Japan. They had a couple kind of minor charting successes, notably the instrumental hit Baja in the US, but they're more noted, I think, for their Japanese stuff. But they covered several Gary Lewis songs, including Count Me In and She's Just My Style. They also covered quite a few of the same tunes that Gary did on other albums. They did versions of Travelin' Man and the Birds and the Bees and stuff. So covering an astronaut song doesn't really seem like too far out of Gary's wheelhouse. So they actually went on the Ed Sullivan Show to promote Main Street and the live recording, or live recording as many of the Ed Sullivan recordings tend to be. That one didn't really catch on, peaked at number 101 when released as a single shortly before this album. Again, another one that Gary said he wasn't a particularly big fan of. No doubt someone felt that he kind of had to do it. It reminds me some of his earlier song, New in Town. It's kind of this melancholy thing, walking around the town. In this case, you've been spurned or rejected, so the neon lights look dim and all this kind of stuff. But I think Gary does a good job with it. I like when he does kind of melancholy songs. And like Mr. Memory, it's definitely more ambitious. We'll see a lot of very close covers. Not close covers on this LP before the day is done, and this one feels like someone was trying to kind of break that trend. Alright, then we get Listen to the Rhythm of the Falling Rain, telling me just what a fool I'd been. This would lend its name to the next LP, well, somewhat anyway, Rhythm of the Rain plus Hayride, and we will get to this record before too long. But Gary, or someone told Gary, I should say, to cover the Cascades' Rhythm of the Rain. Of all the covers that Gary has done, and Gary's done a lot by this point, Rhythm of the Rain is probably the closest to the original. Sometimes Gary takes an original and puts a cool spin on it. like Rubber Ball. He has Leon Russell doing these kind of Wolfman Jack vocals, or he has a harpsichord to the Turtles' She'd Rather Be With Me. And other times Gary does what I call the light beer covers. They're basically the same, but they're kind of stripped down, they're made simpler, there's less nuance to them, that sort of thing. But here for Rhythm of the Rain, Gary is copying the Cascades recording as close as humanly possible, to the point where if you played them, I'm not even really sure I could tell you which was which. It's a clone as opposed to a cover. It sounds nice, but it also sounds really unambitious. Gary needed to add his own sort of spin to this. But Rhythm of the Rain did strike a chord when it releases a single, peaked at number 63, the final charting single the group ever had. Not too shabby, again lent its name to the next LP because it appears both here and here. An interesting choice. I kind of wish they'd done more with it. And this was another one, again, in those blurbs that Gary was like, yeah, I did it because I had to, not because I wanted to, that sort of thing. Alright, we have a cover by The Circle, another close one too, Turn Down Day. Gary basically copies The Circle. His version, it's a good choice. I think his voice is more suited for it than something like Rhythm of the Rain, because he does kind of sound like the singers for The Circle. But again, another one, I wish Gary had kind of reached out and done something a little bit different, a little more nuanced to make it stand out. And we have a Gary Puckett in the Union Gap cover with Over You. So, they've done Gary Puckett songs before, notably a cover of the Union Gap's big success, Young Girl, is on the Gary Lewis Now album. So they were definitely used to that kind of stuff. It's not a bad version of Over You, but you know, it's kind of a little bit simpler, but Gary's voice, I think, suits it. So again, it's another one that falls in the category with Rhythm of the Rain and Turn Down Day, where it's like, I just wish they'd done a little bit more. I wish we had something a little more substantial to bite into. And that concludes the first side of the album. So definitely a mixture of stuff. Got a couple ambitious, you know, kind of recordings and a couple that are very obvious sort of cut and paste covers. Let's talk the singles real quick, because this is where it gets a little more confusing. Main Street was released as a single in 1968. Again, I couldn't find anything to corroborate the exact release date of this album. It was either very late 68 or very early 69. So the Main Street single would have been out first, peaking at number 101. The B-side was CC Rider. We'll come back to CC Rider a little bit later in the video. Of course, we get the live recording of it. But Main Street just didn't really catch on. So the big single for this album was originally planned to be Mr. Memory, backed with the cover of Every Day I Have to Cry Some. And indeed, the singles collection uses that approach. Mr. Memory is paired up with that song. But it also notes that this was a canceled single. That for somewhere along the line, for some reason, they decided to scrap the Mr. Memory and Every Day I Have to Cry Some single and replace it with something else, which we'll get to in a second. Don't know the reasoning for that. Apparently there were promotional copies pressed, and maybe some countries even got that as their kind of mainstream release single. But instead we get Rhythm of the Rain backed with Mr. Memory, which peaked at number 63, the last charting single for the group. Again, Rhythm of the Rain reused here. So definitely some weird shuffling going on behind the scenes. Maybe no one was quite sure what the big song should be, so they kind of tried a couple different things. Mr. Memory, not a bad choice for a single, because it is really ambitious. Maybe it's just a little too quirky, but maybe Rhythm of the Rain was just kind of playing it safe. You know, oh, we know that'll be a big hit, and since Mr. Memory's ambitious, we can stick it on there. I don't know, it's odd. That single would have come out, as far as I know, after this album. If you know something to the contrary, please let me know below. Flip the record over, we get the song Apologize, a Griffin and Gordon composition. And this one had been covered by several people, including Brian Hyland and Ed Ames. Brian Hyland does kind of a boyish, juvenile version. Ed Ames, with his deep, manly voice, does more of an adult version. Gary kind of tries to split the difference for this. It's a very beautiful song. I like Apologize quite a bit. He does an okay job. I feel like, you know, he was doing another one of those copycat covers and wasn't really sure how to do it or what exactly he wanted to cover, so he tried to do both. It's an interesting choice, though, and I think shows that Gary had quite a bit of range when he wanted to. We get the next song. This is an early one. Turn Around, Look at Me, an early one for Glenn Campbell. Glenn Campbell, so it was his first kind of nationwide hit. A lot of other artists have covered it too. The Vogues had a huge success with it, and Gary kind of copies the Vogues version quite a bit. It's a good choice for him. It sounds nice, has a beautiful instrumental backing to it. Again, definitely one of those really ambitious recordings on here. Some of the covers feel like they were churned out in a day as quick as they could, and others feel like there was some time and effort. Turn Around, Look at Me definitely feels like there was a little more effort there. We get Picture Postcard from the team of Proffer and Marmozet. I think, or it's either Marmozet or Marmozet, I forget, but I think it's an original. It's a super energetic song. To me, it feels like it was being considered for a single. I don't know if that's true necessarily, but it definitely sounds like Picture Postcard could have been maybe a quickie B-side or something like that. I don't know that any other artist covered it either. I don't know, it's an interesting song about traveling across the world, but you can track a person by where they mail postcards from, that sort of thing. It's interesting. We get CC Rider. You know, many artists go back in time and do a traditional song or a folk song or something like that. You know, the Beatles did Maggie May, the Beach Boys did several, Sloop John B., Cotton Fields, The Lord's Prayer. So Gary jumps on the boat with his version of CC Rider. He does kind of a fast-paced rocker version of it. There are so many different versions. I don't know that his was necessarily based on any specific rendition that had come previously, like the Animals or something. I don't know if that's the case. This was the B-side for the Main Street single, and was also another track, along with Rhythm of the Rain, that was reused for their next album, Rhythm of the Rain / Hayride. Again, we'll get to that in another video, but reusing a lot of these songs, especially ones that are also on singles, you could definitely tell they were either running out of material or not really sure what to do with what they had. I did like their cover of CC Rider, though. We get Let's Pretend from the team of Geld and Udell. You might notice here it's listed as the last song, and it would make a lot of sense for it to be the last song, but it's actually the penultimate track on the record. I'm assuming this was a last-minute change. I don't know why. But Let's Pretend I was pretty impressed with. I think it's an original, and much like Picture Postcard, strikes me as something that they were, you know, working on a lot to try to maybe make it a potential single or maybe a potential title song for an album or something, because it definitely feels like a lot more time went into it. It has kind of a mature sound to it, like one that would pander more towards adults than the kids or teens. I don't know, I found it kind of an unusual choice for this album, and it should have been the last track, of course. But instead our last track is their cover of I Think We're Alone Now, Tommy James and the Shondells' big hit. Tommy James claimed that his recording of that song invented bubblegum pop. Gary carries on the bubblegum legacy here. You know, his version, not terrible, not great, definitely copying Tommy James and the Shondells pretty closely, but it is a good choice for Gary because he has the right voice for it, kind of the right demeanor for it. So, yeah, we're left with this kind of strange jumble of songs, really. We get some that feel very ambitious and very careful, and others that feel like they're just quickly recorded covers that are thrown out as fast as they can. The fact that we have very little documentation on this album's release, the fact they were reusing songs for later records, all that just goes to show that things were not looking good for the Playboys. And indeed, we have 2 more studio albums and 1 more compilation, and we're good to go. The weird liner notes don't help matters either, though I will say I do like the kind of funky cover design there, a little bit different. So, my friends, next time we'll take a look at an album that does make for a fitting double feature. Rhythm of the Rain Hayride, which of course backs this one up on the twofer. And we'll be having a very similar conversation then. Till then, my friends, hope to have David Beard on to talk Beach Boys. And of course, we got a groove. With that coming in the mail anytime soon now, I'm very excited for that. So please comment your favorite Gary Lewis records or any other artists you'd like me to cover below. Hope to see you next time. So long.